Josh Reed, who is a Murrow and Emmy Award-winning sports director at WIVB in Buffalo, where he covered Nate Oats. And not only did he cover this coach, got to be friends with him. And yesterday, in fact, Nate Oats did a phoner with Josh, the only interview that he did yesterday to talk about the Alabama job. Good morning, Josh. Glad to have you, man.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Hey, I watched your mic'd up piece that you had tweeted out and listening to this guy. I mean, one thing we know right off the bat, he is intense. Tell us about Josh Reed, your experience working with him, watching what he did with this Buffalo program, and what type of basketball coach and man is Alabama getting?
Yeah, I mean, he is, as you mentioned, I tweeted out a piece that we did. That was actually from last year, but he is he's an all gas, no brakes kind of guy. I mean, he wants to run and gun, and he wants to score 95 or 105. He's the guy that stomps on the ground, telling his team to run. I mean, he's very animated on the sideline. You got a guy who is a winner. I mean, he did not take the traditional route. He was at Romulus High School 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He was a math teacher 6 years ago, coaching high school kids. Bobby Hurley snagged him in 2013 to become his assistant coach. Then Bobby Hurley left 2 seasons later. Nate Oats slid over 1 seat. That program went from 0 to 50 under Bobby, getting into the tournament for the first time ever. And when Nate took it over, it went from 50 to 100. I mean, he just took it and put the pedal to the floor. And, I mean, the best thing I can say about the guy is he wins. And he gets his players to run through a wall for him.
Well, that's encouraging. And the playing fast, the stats back it up, the points per game average, because as you know, Josh, very few coaches come in and say, well, we're going to be slow, we're going to be boring. Everybody says, we're going to play fast, we're going to push it, we're going to score a lot of points, we're going to shoot the three. And then you don't always find that that's the case. What you're telling us is that is the case with this guy. He puts his money where his mouth is. They play the way he says they're going to play.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, he will go down guns blazing. I mean, that's the style, that's the way he's coached since he stepped on the floor here. He will get the personnel to do what he wants to do as a head coach. Like I said, he kind of came up with this motto and this mantra for his team called blue collar mentality.
Mm-hmm.
And these guys really bought into it. And after games in the locker room, he would give out a hard hat to one player. And it always went to the guy who was taking charges, the guy that was doing the gritty work and the dirty work. But, as it kind of developed, he always called it blue collar mentality, but it was actually a little more blue collar swag, because this, when you think of blue collar, you think kind of like just down and dirty, and, maybe the team only scores 60 points a game. But his players, he himself, they have swag. I mean, and he'll bring that to Tuscaloosa. I mean, when they walk on the floor, when he would take his team on the floor here at UB, and it didn't matter. Last year in the tournament, they played Kentucky. They played Arizona. This year, they played Arizona State. They played Texas Tech. They played Syracuse this year and beat them on the road. They played West Virginia this year and beat them on the road. When his players walk on the floor, they don't care who they're playing. They think they can beat you. They think they're better than you. And that comes from the top down, because Nate Oats believes he's a better coach than the other guy on the sideline.
Well, Josh, and that's evident in some of his comments. A lot of coaches think it, but as you know, they don't say it. This guy seems to say it. I mean, his comments about the Pac-12 being soft, about how they were a better team than Syracuse and they played tougher, disappointed when he played a team that they felt they should have beaten maybe by 30 and they only won by 15. Interesting personality in regards to he doesn't seem to have much of a filter. Now, the MAC's a great league. We know that, and some really good teams. But in the SEC, it's dog eat dog. How do you think that will go over here? Do you think he'll be as candid, or do you think he may try to tone it down? Or is that just who he is?
Yeah, I think that's who he is. I think that he's that guy that because he took that non-traditional route, he hasn't, been an assistant coach for, a dozen years at some blue blood program and then got a job in the MAC. I mean, I think he has that chip on his shoulder. Like he needs to stick his chest out or people will overlook him and his team. So he feels like he needs to do that. He did that for UB, not so that they were recognized in the MAC. He did that for UB so they were recognized in the national stage. He going at the last 2 months of the season, he started saying, you know what? We should be a 4 seed. We should be a 4 seed. Anytime you talk to him, he was talking, and it wasn't, that message wasn't for people in Buffalo. That message was meant for a broader audience. And then they got a 6 seed, and he graciously, said, hey, this is what we got. Fine. We'll play who we have to play. But he thought they were robbed. He thought they should have been higher. And quite frankly, if they were higher, they don't run into Texas Tech in that second round. And that's why he wanted a 4 seed. Now, what he's going to do in Alabama, I would assume, is he's going to go down there, and he is going to push to get the respect of the SEC. He doesn't need to get it on a national stage because, let's face it, he wins in the SEC. That's just going to come along with the territory. He needed to, if he won in the MAC, he still had to push the national storyline. But that's just who he is. He shoots from the hip, for better or worse, and, if he's wrong, he'll own it.
WIVB Sports Director Josh Reed with us here on the Bud Light Hotline, powered by Adams Beverages, talking about Nate Oats. As you said, just 6 years ago, he was coaching high school and teaching math classes in Romulus, Michigan. Bobby Hurley recognized what type of coach he was, brought him as an assistant. But when he took over for Bobby Hurley, Buffalo was a good program. Hurley had put it on the map. That's why he's at Arizona State. He's coming into a situation here where, let's be honest, if it were going the way that Athletics Director Greg Byrne wanted it to go, then Avery Johnson would still be the coach. Before him, Anthony Grant came in here with a lot of hoopla, won NCAA tournament in 6 years. Grant was relieved of his duties. He's now at Dayton. Avery won NCAA tournament in 4 years. He's no longer the coach. This is a big challenge. Alabama right now, I think there's some talent on board, but it's probably a lower division SEC team. Building a program, because he did take over, and I know he built on what Hurley had done, but he took over a really good situation at Buffalo. Here, he's looking up at a lot of teams ahead of him. And this is a tough question, Josh, but I'll ask it anyway. How long do you think it will take him, in your opinion, to get this thing turned around?
I'd be a fraud to sit here and tell you that I know what the roster looks like, because I don't. I don't with Alabama basketball.
Sure.
Until the past 24 hours. Hasn't been something that was really on my radar. So it'd be hard for me to say when it comes to that. I will say this: what he does, he's a heck of a recruiter, and at the end of the day, it's about Jimmys and Joes
Absolutely.
As much as it is about X's and O's. I mean, he's got to find a way to get kids in there, and he will. He found a way to recruit kids to UB. He's charismatic. He surrounds himself with good assistant coaches, and I'm sure he will down in Alabama as well. So, as far as that goes, I'm not really sure about the roster. The other thing is that he does, and I think he'll continue to do, because it was really successful at UB. He likes to put his hands in the JUCO cookie jar. He likes to bring in some kids that to get transferred out of junior colleges, and he likes to bring kids in that maybe have to sit out a season. UB has got a really talented team coming back next year. They lost 5 seniors, and they are going to be really good again next year. And a lot of it's because they got a kid from Middle Tennessee State that transferred up, and he sat this past year, and he's going to play next year. And this kid's I've watched him practice all year, and he can flat out play. I mean, so I think you're going to see some of that. He's going to continue to do that. Now, he's not going to build his program strictly on, junior college transfers and guys like that, kind of what you see out in Nevada with Musselman. So he's not going to do that strictly, but he will try to, juice the program up a little bit by doing some of that.
One thing that intrigued me this morning in regards to conversing with you here was obviously you're a sportscaster, you've covered him professionally, but you forged a personal relationship with him. I think it's safe to say you're friends. You know him off the court. He brought his family in last night on the plane with Greg Byrne, his wife, who has battled through cancer, 3 lovely daughters. What's he like? What kind of person is he off the court? What's your impression of him as a man and a friend?
He's a man of faith. He's just a solid guy. I mean, he is, and he calls himself a hoops junkie, and he is. I mean, outside of his faith and family, it's hoops. I mean, I was lucky enough to a couple different times during the NBA playoffs, we met up and had dinner and watched some games. And, anytime you can sit with somebody that has knowledge and, can kind of listen to what he, and kind of feed off of what he's telling you and see the game through his eyes a little bit, it's really interesting. He's just, you guys are going to like him. He's charismatic, and it's not for show. It really isn't. That's the one thing that you're gonna wonder at first. You're gonna go, because there is another side to him, because every once in a while he has the kind of aw shucks mentality a little bit, but that's just kind of who he is. But he's a confident guy. Your fan base down there, you got a good one, because he's genuine. Like you mentioned, I had the chance to forge a relationship with him, kind of, a personal one. And, I hated to see him go on a couple different levels, but I also know that, I knew that this was probably on the horizon. I mean, it's tough for mid-major programs to keep really good coaches, because at the end of the day, you want to take your swing at the big boys. And, so he's going to get his chance. And of course, I wish him nothing but the best.
Just a couple more questions for you, Josh. I got to be honest with you. Most schools, when I see the school, I recognize it. He played at Division III Maranatha Baptist University in Wisconsin. I'd never heard of that school. He started his coaching career there and then at Wisconsin Whitewater. You mentioned Romulus High School, now in Western New York at Buffalo. This is going to be a little bit of a culture change, in terms of geography, coming from a Midwest guy and Western New York guy coming to the Southeast. How do you think he'll handle that transition? You've traveled some, we both have, and different areas of the country have different ways of doing things. His ability to adjust, just him and his family, on a personal level to Tuscaloosa as opposed to Buffalo and some of those places in the Midwest. How do you think he'll handle that?
Yeah, he will. I mean, he's a people's person, and I know what you're getting at, as far as the different regions of the country. And I'm lucky enough. I travel to cover the Buffalo Bills, so I go to, you name the city, I've been there, and to cover UB and, college towns. And he's a people's person, and that travels, that travels city to city. If you're a people person, which he is, it goes. It doesn't matter if you're in Tuscaloosa, Buffalo, or Canton, Ohio. People, if you're a likable person, that's just who you are, so I think he'll adapt well. And I think, here's the thing. I'm sure everybody down there by now has seen the video of him showing up at the airport.
Yep.
I don't know if there are a ton of coaches that walk over immediately, and say hi at the fence and, and make sure they take a second to, say thank. I mean, how many times did he say thank you?
A bunch.
He said thank you a dozen times, and he's only said 24 words.
That's right.
So that's Nate right there. And hey, I got to tell you this story because I think you and your listeners will appreciate this. So kind of going back to you had mentioned this brought up this story in the front of my head. You mentioned that he played at a little D3 school and everything, and so ESPN came out with this, the top 64 coaches based on their playing careers, and Nate Oats was listed at 43, I think. Now, Bobby Hurley was number 3, so to kind of give you an idea, or number 2 maybe even. So just to kind of give you an idea, Chris Mullen was number 1.
Right.
So I had a chance to ask Nate, hey, what'd you think about that list? Being 43, and he laughs. He loves that type of stuff, and he laughs and he goes, if I blame my coach, if he would have given me the green light a little more like I give my guys, I'd have been a little higher on the list. That's his personality. You're gonna get, and look, all I know is what I see from Nick Saban from afar, but their personalities are a lot different. Now, obviously, their track record of winning is a lot different. So I'm not trying to compare and contrast, but you're gonna get a lot of lighthearted moments like that with him because it's his personality. He goes, he works hard, but he likes to have fun, and it shows. And I think you'll see it early.
You mentioned Nick Saban, and Nick Saban does a lot to support the other programs here. But it's interesting. I was reading a piece on Oats in The Athletic where he mentioned Coach Saban. He said, you'll see Nick Saban go crazy when Alabama's up 3 touchdowns in the fourth quarter. Well, that's what's starting to irritate me. We're up 28, for instance, against St. Bonaventure. We're supposed to win that game by 35-40. Well, we don't. We won it by 18 because we don't keep our foot on the gas pedal. That goes back to what you were saying about pushing all the time, not paying attention to the scoreboard, which is something Nick Saban is famous for. You don't play to the scoreboard, you play to every play, and it sounds like that's a similar philosophy for Coach Oats in regards to you just keep playing for 40 minutes regardless.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think you have – I mean, if you're a coach in any sport, there are the legends, if you will, that you pick pieces of the way they do things, and I think every good coach does it, especially young coaches like Nate coming up. He always talks about different things that he's taken from other coaches. I thought it was really interesting. The big storyline going into the NCAA tournament game against Arizona State was, of course, he coached against Bobby or he coached with Bobby, and he was getting ready to coach against Bobby. And I asked him, I said, what's the number one thing you learned from Bobby? And he said that he learned how to look at the game through a point guard's eye. He learned how to study film like a point guard, and that's helped him work with point guards. And he said, who better to learn that from than, a guy who's just an assassin for Duke. So I think that to your point, Nate is a sponge when it comes to other coaches and picking pieces of, and it crosses sports. Like you said, he mentioned Nick Saban in an article. I mean, that's not in the same sport. And I mean, but I think a lot of the really good coaches do that.
All right, last topic. Obviously, this impacts the staff at Buffalo. I see that Jim Whitesell is the interim head coach. You mentioned building the staff here at Alabama. Do you think Joshy brings, whether it's Jamie Quarles, Brian Hodgkin, does Whitesell get the job there at Buffalo? Staff-wise, do you see anybody from Buffalo coming with him here? And what do you think happens there with the Bulls?
Yeah, I think, let's face it, Mark Allnut, the UB athletic director, is a smart man. He knew even after Nate signed the contract extension that he needed to always have a plan in place, because, Nate at some point was probably going to leave. Even after he signed his contract extension, we had a chance to speak with him. He said, look, I want to stay in Buffalo, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you 100% that I'm going to be here forever. I mean, that's what kind of guy he is. He's honest. But here's the thing. Brian Hodgson is a recruiting monster. Mm-hmm. I mean, he is a really good recruiter. And if, UB's got to worry that if he leaves, he takes, we'll see what that does to the recruiting class, because they got a good one coming in. And what that would mean, some of those guys would follow and trickle down to Alabama. He's a really good one. Coach Whitesell, on the other hand, has been around the game a long time, and he has seen it all and done it all. And he was on St. John's staff. He's been around. He was at Loyola, so he's been around and seen it all. And I also know that they're going to cast feelers outside the program. It's interesting, though, because, Mark wasn't at UB when Nate was promoted. It was actually Auburn's athletic director. Actually, I take that back. It was Danny White.
Central Florida's athletic director.
So, yeah, exactly. So, but they slid Nate over. So they have the last hire they promoted from within, obviously, and had great success doing it. So it'll be interesting. But I also know that they'll take their time. They're not going to rush this thing. They'll take their time and make sure they get somebody that they think can kind of continue to carry this program in the right direction, because like I said, it's got a ton of talent coming back. So and that speaks volumes to what Nate thinks about this Alabama job, because there's a chance that if Nate comes back next year, they win 30 games again next year. That's how talented this team is going to be again.
Wow.
So that speaks volumes.
Well, Josh, man, this has been some great insight into Coach. I'm looking forward to hopefully at the press conference today getting to say hello to him and meeting myself. But I think folks are getting more excited. I mean, when he was first announced, I'm not going to lie to you, and I think Greg Byrne had done a good job of keeping it under wraps, and a lot of people were chasing the Thad Matta trail, and the next thing you know, it's Nate Oats, and I think a lot of people are like, who, what, where? But the more you read, and of course the record speaks for itself, but to get to know.
Let me ask you real quick.
Go ahead.
So that when people are going to ask me here, well, what's the feeling down there?
Well, they're warming up to him.
What was the knee jerk?
Well, initially the knee jerk reaction, I think, was a lot of Alabama basketball fans. I think the ones that are follow the program really closely certainly were aware of who he is and what he had done at Buffalo. I think for a lot of them, the casual fans, again, it was who? What? I think they wanted to make what would be called a splash hire on the national scene, a name that more people recognize. But I think just even after, less than 24 hours away from the announcement that he was going to be the basketball coach, people were warming up to him and reading the stories about him and hearing stories like you're telling. And I think today he'll knock them dead at the press conference. And I think people are going to get on board. Enthusiasm is contagious, and I think people are going to get on board with him. But initially, honestly, Josh, for the folks up there in Buffalo, I think it was a surprise because, again, they call Byrne the ninja for good reason. I don't know that there were many people that saw this one coming. Let's put it that way.
Good. I think you hit it on the head. He will impress at the press conference, and let's face it, he'll impress next fall. And then at the end of the day, that's when it counts.
That's the bottom line, isn't it? That's for sure. Wins and losses. Hey, my friend, thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Take care.